Good evening, everyone. It is so great to see you and be a part of this wonderful program called Unchained. And I am your host, Travis Walker. I am the pastor here of the Fort Myers Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we are so grateful that you have chosen to join us on this 10-day journey together as we come together to find hope and healing from addiction. You know, you or someone you love may be battling with addiction in your life right now, and we just want you to know that there's hope. We want you to know that there are people who have been where you are right now. Over these next 10 nights, you're going to hear interviews of different people struggling with different addictions, but we all have one thing in common, is that is our need of Jesus Christ in our life. So again, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear where you're from. I know this is being recorded in Fort Myers, and we would love to hear, though, if you're from somewhere else. So if in the chat right now, if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself and say where you're from, we'd love to kind of see all the people who are tuning in for this presentation tonight. And we want to encourage you to like this page and subscribe. If you found this page today and you aren't already subscribed to this program, there is a link on the screen right now, relevantseminars.com/Fort Myers. We want to encourage you to do that right now. There are several benefits for registering. Number one, you're going to receive a link sent to your phone and your email every night right before the meeting starts to give you a reminder. And it'll be super easy. You can just click the link, jump right in, and be a part of each night. Also, if you're registered, your name will be put in a drawing for Richie's book. Richie Halverson, who is our main presenter for this series. His book, The Darkness Shall Not Overcome, about his own struggle with overcoming opioid addiction, which you're going to be hearing about here shortly. He's going to be telling his story, and then each night after the interview, we're going to have a special teaching presentation by Richie Halverson as well. So we are so looking forward to that. And so I just want to welcome you again to tonight's program. Let's get right into Richie's story at this time.
So it's no looking back for me. It's cool to be in this same spot. Last time I was here, man, I was tore up from the floor up, completely chained to every addiction you can imagine. And it's cool to come back here, to be unchained today. Hey, my name is Richie Halverson. I'm pastor, speaker, but my real passion is to help people overcome addiction and find a new way of life. It's kind of crazy, but the last time that I was here in this spot, I was jobless. I had just been kicked out of the halfway house where I was living because I had stolen from the halfway house manager because I was in active addiction using. My wife couldn't let me home. She wanted to let me home, but she couldn't let me home because she couldn't trust me there either. No one was safe. You know, that's the problem with addiction, is it infects and affects everybody in the family. It hurts everybody. It affects everybody's peace of mind and their ability to enjoy life. And so I was literally at my bitter end, that bottom you hear them talk about in addiction. I was there. I was living out of my car just down at the bottom of this hill. And I remember the night before I went to treatment for the last time, I came up here. And I remember it was nighttime. It was just absolutely clear, crystal. I could see Nashville just clearly from here. I had come here so many times in my active addiction. I basically came to this threshold where I made the decision, okay, either I'm gonna die or I'm gonna give this thing one more try. Images of my children kept going through my head, images of my wife and my family, images of the person that I used to be. And that's the problem with addiction. We become someone else. I wasn't the same person that I was before. It completely changed me inside and out. We live to use and we use to live. Addiction had reduced me to this point of just mere survival. I didn't care about nutrition and eating. I was 50 pounds underweight, begging for money, doing the very things that I never would have thought in a million years that I would be doing. That's what addiction brought me to that place. And so on that night, I was here. It was actually Christmas Eve that I came up here. I spent that Christmas Eve alone. I remember I started talking to God again for the first time. At this point in my life, I didn't even really know if I believed in God. I had grown up in a Christian home. My father was a pastor. I grew up in a loving family. Addicts don't just come from broken homes or bad areas or bad neighborhoods. Addiction comes from everywhere. It affects everybody. Getting to this point where I came up here, it was the Christmas Eve, and it really just hit home where my addiction had brought me, what it had stolen from me, all the things that were missing in my life, joy, peace of mind. That's what's crazy is I went to the drugs for joy and peace of mind, but that's the irony of addiction. It steals the things that you went to it for in the beginning. And now I didn't have any freedom. I didn't have any joy. I didn't have any peace. I was completely broken. And so sitting here, I started talking to God and started saying, you know what, if you are there, I need your help. I'm completely fed up with this way of life. I can't do this anymore. I'm hurting from the inside out and I need help. And so I came up here and had a conversation with God for the first time in a long time. I didn't even know at this point God was even there or if there really was a God. And so I started praying up here on Lover Circle. Started talking to God for the first time in a very long time. Said, man, if you're there, I need help. I can't do this. I completely felt worthless and hopeless and helpless. But something spoke to my heart and told me, don't give up. Don't give up yet. In recovery, we have a saying, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle. And so I was at this point and I heard that don't give up, and I made the decision that evening right here in this spot looking over the city to go to treatment one last time. And that's what I did. The very next morning I got my parents sent me tickets. I got on a plane and I went to treatment. I grew up in a pretty religious home and had a pretty good family upbringing and parents who loved me and two sisters that were never getting into trouble, and then I came along and in high school I started getting in with kind of the wrong group of people that were kind of going in the wrong direction, and my story is pretty much that generic story. In the beginning, using was fun, it was the party. But then it got bad, and it got to where I was using every day, all the time. Opioids just almost devastated my life, and I couldn't go to enough doctors to get the amount of prescriptions and drugs that I needed. And so I started calling in my own prescriptions, impersonating a doctor and calling them in. And I got away with it for a long time, but you may get away with it for a while, but eventually you're going to get caught. And eventually I did. I would impersonate the doctor and call in those prescriptions. And one time I was at a pharmacy not far from here and had called in a prescription, and I'm walking in the store to get it, go to the pharmacy, they're on to me. I know they're on to me. I get ready to leave, and as I'm coming out of the store, about 5 squad cars pull up in front of the store and they arrest me there on the spot. Now you would have thought that was enough to kind of wake me up from this, but the reality is it takes more than that. It took me getting arrested about 4 or 5 more times took 4 or 5 more felonies. It took 4 more times in jail before I was even at that breaking point. Called my parents, was expecting them to bail me out of jail. But instead of them bailing me out, I got a little note the guard gave me from my mom. And she said, Richie, we're not bailing you out anymore. We're done. And we love you. We're praying for you, but we're not doing this anymore. And that was the moment when I started realizing I had to make a change. That was when reality started hitting in. That was the first step towards me hitting my bottom. So don't enable people. Love them from a distance. Give them that tough love. All right? But don't enable them. In recovery, we call it, you can love your family to death. We have seen addicts die because their family just could not get out of their way. They kept throwing money and enabling bad behavior. Don't do that. Have boundaries, but always be there so that when they're ready to get help, you're ready there to help them from a distance. You're not going to do it for them, but you're going to help them. In the Nashville City Courthouse, that I was facing 4 pending felony charges for prescription fraud. I had 30 days clean, just got done with treatment, had my first court hearing clean, and showed up. I had missed my court while I was in treatment, so there was a warrant for my arrest for failure to appear. They immediately arrested me, took me into custody, and I thought I was going to be going away for a very long time. But by this time in my life, I had surrendered to a power greater than myself, and I was willing and ready to deal with the wreckage of my past, and I was ready for healing. I was ready for restitution. I was ready to deal with the things that I had done and face up to it. It felt so much better going into court clean than using. And so when I went before the judge, they had me drug test. I was clean. I had just finished treatment. That was good. And unbelievably, that day, I was able to leave. That the conclusion, if I remain clean, I don't get trouble again, they were going to expunge all 4 of these felony charges off my record. And so, man, I had been told multiple times that I was going to have to do some serious time, but God had other plans. And so, man, I left that day from the courthouse, and the air smelled a little sweeter. The sun, man, it shined a little brighter. And I still remember the way it felt to that day of one of the benefits of living a life clean and in the process of recovery. And so I did exactly that, man. I did everything that they told me to do. If they had told me to stand on my head, I would have stand on my head, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I started going to meetings. I started working the steps. I got a sponsor. I got someone who knew how to live clean. I didn't know how to live clean. I knew how to get high. I knew how to con and manipulate and steal, but I didn't know how to live successfully clean. And so I got a sponsor who did, and I started listening to him. They told me to take the cotton out of my ears and shove it in my mouth, to do more listening than talking. And that's what I started doing. And day by day, each day, I started living a cleaner, freer, happier life. My marriage was holding on by a thread. But my wife, she let me come back home. We reconciled our relationship. It took time. Trust that was damaged over years doesn't heal overnight. So it took time for me to heal that relationship. And you know what? Sometimes a lot of people in recovery, their marriage doesn't heal. Unfortunately, lots of times the relationship doesn't last. I was fortunate that my relationship did. Now my wife and I, we've been married for 22 years. to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. My name is Richie Halverson. I'm a pastor, speaker, but my real passion and focus is helping people overcome addiction and find a new way of life. I struggled with opioid addiction for years. It almost took everything from me, my family. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't go more than a few hours without using. Jails, institutions, and the next thing for me was death. But friends, when I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I asked for help, and I began working a program of recovery, man, the chains that once held me back began breaking. And that's what this series is all about. Living a life unchained. This series is a 10-part series. Each session will look at different aspects of addiction, examining the problem, but more importantly, getting into the solution. In order to have a life unchained, we have to start breaking through the chains that keep holding us back. Whether it's drugs or it's behavior, you name it. There is something that's holding you back from the life that you want to live. Every session, we will have an interview, a different person who has struggled with a different addiction. But again, what we used is not near as important as why we were using them. I want to encourage, this series is for everyone and anyone who wants to live a fuller and freer life. The key is, guys, we're in this together. We are not alone. Everyone struggles. Everyone has problems. And maybe you don't identify as an addict. That's okay. But maybe you've been hurt. You have a child that's an addict. You have a spouse that's an addict. I guarantee everybody watching right now has been hurt by addiction in one way or another. Maybe it's not a habit, but it's a hang-up, or it's a hurt that you experienced in your life. This series is for everyone, regardless of religious background or your belief system or your worldview. Now, I am a Christian pastor, and we are going to be looking at a lot of stories from the Bible and a lot of Scripture. But regardless of your belief, all of these truths and these principles are going to be universally applicable. You're welcome. Even if you're not where maybe I am or someone else is in your belief, find the things that you identify with. And I promise you'll experience more freedom from the things that are holding you back in life. In John 8:36, it says, "If the Son sets you free, you are truly free." And it wasn't until Jesus set me free that I was really free. In John 10:10, it says, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." That's what Jesus wants for you right now. In Luke 4:18, we read, "Jesus was sent to proclaim liberty to the captives, to recover the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed." Wherever Christ went, people were set free. In Mark, the 5th chapter, Jesus gets out of a boat and he is met by someone who is possessed. This series, Unchained, is for people who are possessed by life. You see, some of us may not be possessed by demons, but we are possessed by worry. We're possessed by stress. Some of us are possessed by our past or our poor choices. Some of us are possessed by bill collectors and bad debt. Some of us are possessed by bad marriages, where we're just constantly fighting and going back and forth. Maybe you are possessed by bad health or a bad habit or a bad and painful experience. And you know what? Don't think that because you're not an addict or you don't think you struggle with addiction that you're not possessed by anything. Don't think that because you go to church or are very religious that you don't have any demons in your life. Because, as I was reading in the Scriptures, in Mark, the very first miracle that Mark records is Jesus casting a demon out of someone at church. Some of the most messed up, chained up, possessed people I have ever met, and I'm a pastor so I can say this, have been very religious people. You see, for some of us, it may not be substance abuse, but it's workaholism. That's your demon. For some of us, it isn't workaholism, but it's sexual attention, sexual gratification. Maybe it's getting attention or making heads turn. Even religion can be a source of addiction. But friends, regardless of what you're chained to or how bad your condition is, Christ can heal you. This guy was in pretty bad shape. The guy is possessed, naked. He's living in a graveyard. Notice Mark 5:3. It says that he had often been bound with shackles, chains, but he wrenched the chains apart and he broke the shackles. So check this out. The demons gave this guy some strength. Okay, so the demons gave him something, but it came at a price. You see, the drugs give you something, but it comes at a price. Anger and resentment, it gives you something at the beginning. It gives you a rush of endorphins. It fills you with maybe anger. It may give you something at first, but it always takes more than it gives. Denial works at first, but in the end, it takes more than it gives. In Mark 5:4, it says that no one was strong enough to subdue this guy and his demons. You see, the thing about addiction is we are not strong enough. He wasn't strong enough to resist the demons. We're not strong enough to stop ours. I wasn't strong enough to stop using. My family wasn't strong enough to get me to stop using. You're not strong enough. Some of us aren't strong enough to stop spending, right? You're not strong enough to stop gambling. No one is strong enough to subdue our demons. But the good news is there is someone who is strong enough. In Mark 5:9, Jesus asked him, "What's your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us." You see, many of us don't have just a few problems. We have many problems. Most of us have not just a few regrets, we have many regrets. We have many credit card bills. We have many problems. We have many mistakes. We have many sins. But Romans 5:20 says that where sin increases, grace increases more. Hell is no match for the power that is accessible to you today. I find it interesting that this guy who is possessed, the Bible never records his name. And because the Bible never records the guy's name, we just call him demoniac. Think about it. We know him by his demons. And we tend to do that to other people, don't we? We know someone as, oh, she's the drug addict, right? She's a liar, right? He's an adulterer. He's got a terrible temper. But notice how Jesus is different. Jesus looks past the demons all the way to the person. Jesus sees beyond our past all the way to our potential. The demoniac wasn't always like this. We know this because in Mark 5:19, Jesus says, "Go home to your people." So apparently he had a home. He had people in his life. And so the question, and as I'm reading this, I thought, well, how did he end up like this? Maybe you're wondering, how in the world did I ever end up in this place? Maybe some couples are thinking, how did our marriage end up in this place? How did my son and my daughter end up in this place? You see, no child says, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be a drug addict. No one says, you know what, when I grow up, I want to declare bankruptcy. It happens little by little, slowly over time. Our life is just a accumulation of our choices. It happens little by little, slowly over time. The chain of alcoholism first started with one drink. The chain of pornography, it started with one look. Cheating doesn't begin in the act of infidelity. It begins with a thought. It begins with an idea. And then you act out on it, and now you are chained with regret. In Mark 5:5, it says, "The night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones." He's powerless over his demons. Mark 5:7, crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" So check it out. The demons have started speaking for this man. They're the ones calling the shots. They're the ones telling him how it is. I wonder, is your fear telling you what to do? Is your past dictating your future? Are the drugs telling you when to get up in the morning and when to go to bed? You see, we become powerless over our addiction and our lives become unmanageable. And so what do? Well, what did this possessed guy do? In Mark 5:6, it says that when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and he fell down before him. You see, if you want to live a life unchained, we're gonna have to recognize that we need help. We need someone stronger in us than just us to step in and help us with our demons. This possessed man, he falls at Jesus' feet. The Greek word for fell means to lay prostrate. It's a word that's associated with prayer and worship. Now, a lot of people in the world don't like to admit, but everyone worships something, all right? Regardless of whether you believe in God or you go to church or you do anything, regardless, everybody worships something. You know, what's your go-to? What gets your blood pumping? What gets you up and going in the morning? Maybe it's not a drug, but it's your career. Maybe it's your academic achievement. Maybe it's in your popularity. Everybody worships something. And that's really the essence of what addiction is. Addiction is the result of looking for purpose and fulfillment and identity in something that cannot give it. Addiction is an identity crisis because there's only one person that can really fill your life and give it the fullest meaning that you would like to experience in life. In recovery, there's a saying that with drugs, 1 was too many and 1,000 was never enough. And you can really insert that with any addiction or problem. Because I've noticed that no matter how much money you make, it's never enough. Have you noticed that? No matter how many likes you get on your social media post, if you're going to that for identity and purpose, it's not enough. No matter how in shape you get at the gym, you're always looking in the mirror and you're looking at the other people and you're like, man, I'm not seeing enough. No matter how good or morally, religiously you are, it's never enough. There is always someone smarter, faster, younger, thinner, fitter, better, richer. Worshiping the wrong thing chains us. If you worship your job, you're always chained to who's getting the promotion. If you worship your wealth, you're always chained to what's happening at Wall Street. If you worship popularity, you're always chained to what people think about you. You're always trying to please people, and that's going to wear you out. And what happens is just like with this demoniac, whatever you worship, it starts telling you how to live. It starts telling you what to do. And before long, friends, just like this guy, you're going to be living in a graveyard. But if you can do what this demoniac did, go to someone who's bigger, smarter, more powerful than you, and you get your identity from him, man, Jesus will start doing to your demons what he did to this guy's demons. He casted them out and he drowned them in the sea. In Micah 7:19, it says, God will trample our sins under his feet and throw them into the depths of the ocean. According to Mark 5:15, when people came to Jesus and observed the man who had been demon-possessed sitting down, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion, it says that they became frightened. Most people don't want their demons casted out. You know, we live in a world where people are possessed by problems, and what's sad is most people would choose an insanity that they're used to rather than a freedom they're not used to. You see, these people were frightened because they don't want Jesus to cast their demons out. Some of us have had demons so long we can't imagine what life would be without them. And that's why in verse 17 they beg for Jesus to leave. Friends, living unchained is simple, but it's not easy. Don't confuse simple with easy. Recovery is for people who want it and not necessarily need it. You can't allow what people think to stop you doing what it is that you need to be doing. You see, people can't help you. People can't give you, people don't have the power to unchain you. What people think about you will not transform you. In Mark 5:6, when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran. You see, he knows that he needs something. He knows he needs to do something different. You see, we got to go to God like we know we need him. And we've got to just give him our problems. And when we give God our problems, he gives us his power. No one can do, will do, or has done for you what Christ has done for you. In Isaiah 53:5, it says that he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. This guy was an outcast, naked and abandoned. Soon Jesus will be cast out, and he was naked and abandoned on the cross. This man was torn apart by demons. Jesus will be torn apart by his own people in Romans. Just as this man's flesh was cut up with sharp stones, very soon Jesus' flesh will be cut up by sharp stones at the end of a Roman whip. Jesus, this guy was demon-possessed. Jesus was accused of demon possession, and he was killed so that our demons will no longer possess our lives. Jesus went into a grave so that you can come out of the grave. So are you chained to something today? Are you chained to a circumstance or a problem? Maybe you're chained to a regret or a fear, shame, guilt. Maybe you're chained to a resentment, chained to an addiction, chained to the worry of a person in your life who struggles with addiction. Maybe you think, you know what, I don't have a problem. I can control it. No, you can't. In fact, it's controlling you. You see, whatever's holding you back, we've got to lay it at the feet of Jesus. I lived in a graveyard long enough. I was in active addiction for many years, and it almost ended me up in a graveyard. Some of us watching right now have lived in a graveyard long enough. It's time to come out. In this series, we're going to explore so many tools that can help you live a life unchained. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come.
All right. Well, it is so good to have Richie Halverson with us live here on our stream for tonight. And we just got done hearing your story. We just got done hearing about the power of God in the demoniac's life. Thank you so much for that teaching, Richie. And man, it's just great to have you here in Fort Myers.
Hey, man, it is a blessing to be able to be here. I'm super excited about Unchained and just what God is going to do, you know, in the Fort Myers and surrounding areas and even beyond. You know, as we've been able to do this all over, every time we do it, we'll have people joining us from just all over the country, but super, super blessed to be able to be a part of this here in Fort Myers.
Yeah, so everybody, you know, get online and say hi to Richie and tell him, you know, I know we already did that at the beginning, but maybe you can tell him where you're from. And yeah, if you've been to one of these Unchained before, let us know. Maybe we have some repeat here in the audience, and we'd love to know that as well. Yeah, Richie, there's been a couple questions that have come in, but before that, is there anything you just want to say to our audience tonight?
Yeah, you know, I just again, I'm really excited about what God's doing, and I know you know, maybe you're not watching this live, but you've just happened upon it. I would just encourage you to check it out. This is for everyone. You know, often it's entitled Unchained: Hope and Healing from Addiction. And we're certainly talking about addiction and the reality there. But the fact of the matter is as people will hear in this series over and over again, is that we are all sin addicted. We are all often can fall into a trap of going to something for significance, purpose, joy, you name it. And we go to these empty wells that don't satisfy us. And so I just really want to encourage everybody who's watching now to invite someone to check it out. We're going to be going on this journey together. Invite a friend to join us live, but even if they got to check it out a little bit later, that's fine too, because we all in life can get chained to something. And so I want to live a more unchained life this next year than I did this year. And so, God is always breaking chains in my life, and he wants to do the same in your life. So let's go through this together, and the Lord will set us free. So excited.
Amen. Yeah. Well, I wish we had more time, but I know we do have a few questions, and I do want to get those to you while we have the chance. So one of the questions that came in was dealing with the idea, you mentioned in your story about how nobody trusted, even the closest people didn't trust you. So the question is, how do you deal with the frustration of not being trusted at the beginning of your recovery?
Yeah, Travis, that's a great question, because I think that is something that that certainly was something I struggled with. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. And I think we all do on some level, in this instant gratification, this instant response. And I remember, and I share a little bit about it in this series. I remember I'd been clean for maybe 6 months or so. And I go up to a couple of my friends in recovery, and I'm talking to them, and I talk to my sponsor. It was like a mentor in recovery, in 12-step recovery. And I go to him, and was just talking about how, man, my wife doesn't trust me, and my parents, my in-laws, my family don't trust me. And I was just kind of sharing this frustration with him, and he just didn't even hesitate. And he said, "Richie, how long did you use?" And I was like, "Well, been using for a while." How long have you been, lying to your family, manipulating your family? How long have you been violating the trust? And I was like, wow, for a few years. And he said, "We can't expect trust that has been violated over years to be fixed overnight." And patience, patience. The trust, it grows back, but it needs time to heal. And people have to see that they can trust you, because for years I told them they could trust me. I said, I'm sorry. And then I would continue to violate trust. And so it was really something I needed to show my family. And I just needed to be patient. And it was hard. It was tough. I wanted to have that response immediately, but it was in that time of being patient that I was learning that valuable lesson of the importance of trust, the value of trust, and how we don't want to violate that trust, and how it takes time. And then since then, I've had people, dear family and friends, near and dear to my life, who struggled with addiction or with honesty, who've violated trust. And so I've been on the other end of this, and I realize now also what I kind of put my family through. So it just takes time. Be patient. That habit that happened, that we've been investing in over years, isn't going to be healed overnight. The dishonesty, the wreckage we put into our families, into our finances, over years, the debt we've been compiling over the last year, that's not going to get fixed overnight, but we take baby steps, and slowly it gets restored.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I appreciate you sharing that, Richie. We might have time for a couple more here. One of them was, someone's asking you about, that moment of temptation when it comes, especially early in recovery, when you have those strong urges. What was something that you learned, like a tip to deal with those strong urges in the moment of temptation?
That's great. Yeah, there's a few things that that come to mind. One is understanding our triggers. You know, in recovery, we learn this word triggers. There are things that can be a trigger. There are people in our lives that often will trigger a certain response. They know how to maybe push our buttons, and some of them may be very close to us that, you know, we can't necessarily always get away from them, and we've got to maybe walk to a room so we don't lash out in a temper or something like that. So knowing your triggers. You know, in recovery, it was, you know, not having a lot of cash in my pocket. You know, that was a trigger. Getting money into the bank or getting it to a family member, not having medicines and drugs that were around, you know, having new people, places, and things in my life. So that was one thing, is being aware. You know, knowledge is important. Having a community that we can rely on. I mentioned the sponsor that I had. I mentioned, you know, the rooms of 12-step recovery, you know, and there's all kinds of different programs out there. There is, you know, church community is an important part of my community. And sometimes, you know, maybe, you know, a church person has violated that trust before and you don't feel like you can go to them. There are people in your faith communities that you can trust. You just got to pray that God will kind of lead you to those people and be patient. But we can't do this alone. You know, when we're alone, we're in terrible company. And so instead of trying to fight by ourselves, man, we pick up that phone and immediately call someone. And I just, you know, secrets keep us sick. And when we're alone, we're in terrible company. So we need each other. You know, that was another thing. And then, of course, one of the biggest things is, man, I thought I knew how to pray before, but it wasn't until recovery that I really learned how to pray. And since then, you know, God keeps bringing me to places. Then I went into ministry. I thought I knew how to pray before then, but now I really know how to pray. And then God gave me teenagers. And then I really know what prayer is, you know, a young adult. So pray some more, and just leaning on his strength instead of our strength. And then playing the tape all the way through. Often we'll just focus on that immediate, like, oh, I want to do this now. You know, okay, I'm feeling this impulse to go to that website now. Okay, play the tape through. Is that instant gratification worth the hours of guilt and shame that you're going to feel afterwards? You know, or the relationship and the wreckages that it does. Is that relief from that going to be worth it? Is lashing out in your temper really worth sleeping on the couch for a couple nights? You know, I don't think so. It's not a good payoff. So play the tape all the way through. Last thing I'll say is the acronym HALT was helpful for me too. Be very aware before you make any major decisions or do anything. HALT. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? And those are also trigger points. And so that's something that I've learned, you know, and I don't always practice it perfectly, but I always, you know, before I make major big decisions, you know, HALT, you know, and being aware of the what's going on in your mind underneath, because it's so easy to just react and jump into it. So,
man, thank you so much, Richie. That was gold right there, everybody. I hope you really paid attention. I mean, he just went through about 5 or 6 different strategies that if you just replay this and actually write those down and journal them and really do some self analysis and just reflect on that. I mean, that could provide you a week's worth of journaling and introspection. So thank you, Richie. I mean, I wish we had more time, but guess what? He's going to be here every night, guys. So don't worry. He's got a presentation every night. And Richie, I'll just give the one last opportunity to say one more thing before we close out our meeting tonight.
Awesome, Travis. I just want to let you know that we don't have to settle for status quo. We don't have to settle for our chains. God wants you to live a happier, freer, more abundant life. You know, whatever it may be, if it's in your health, whether it's in emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever you're going through right now, God wants you to experience greater freedom. There is freedom. There is, you know, there is a lie, once an addict, always an addict. You know, you can experience God breaking those chains. And maybe you're not sure what you believe as far as whether there's a God or what. Maybe you don't really identify with Christians. You don't really know what you believe. I want to encourage you to come to this, because the principles we're going to be unpacking, they're just universal. Things like honesty, hope, faith, courage, all of those things. Yeah, we're going to be going to the Bible. I'm a Christian, and I've seen God work in my life in a mighty way. But we're going to be looking at a lot of things, and so maybe you're not completely sold on that yet. That's okay. Just keep watching, keep coming. We're journeying together. We're growing together. We're learning together. And I promise you, if you go through this process with us, you're going to experience some chains being broken, and you're going to live a more unchained life. So thank you so much for having me here and just being a part of this. And I'm praying for each and every one of you. Thank you, Pastor Travis. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Richie. Well, thanks again, Richie, for sharing your heart with us, for sharing your story. And we want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to register for this seminar. We're going to be back here every night for the next, we have 9 more nights after tonight. So we're just getting started here, and each night you're going to learn something new, I promise you, something that's going to bless you and the people that you love that are struggling. And we're all struggling. We're all in a battle. And there is no safety outside of Jesus Christ in this world. We always have to be vigilant. The Bible says the devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. So we have to stay together. We need to support one another. And this church right here, Fort Myers Seventh-day Adventist Church, is a church that will support you in your recovery. You don't have to come in here looking perfect. You can come just as you are, right through the doors of this church. We have services here every Saturday at 11 o'clock. You're welcome to come. You're going to see people here. You're going to meet people here who have been on the journey you're on and have overcome that trials and tribulations and struggles and failures and addictions and all those things that make life difficult. I want to tell you that you will find support right here in this church. So we'd love to see you if you're in the Fort Myers area. Also, we want to encourage you to register. Again, if you haven't done so, the link is on the screen right now, relevantseminars.com/Fort Myers. Please subscribe to this channel. We always are producing content that I think will be a blessing to you here on this YouTube channel. And, as promised, we're going to have a drawing tonight for those who have registered for Richie's book. And let's see who won tonight's drawing. And tonight's winner is Abner Rodriguez. Abner Rodriguez, congratulations on winning our first night's random drawing for Richie Halverson's book. We will be reaching out to you shortly and letting you know how you can receive that book, or we'll be sending it to you. If you missed out tonight, don't worry. We're going to be doing a drawing every night for the next 9 nights. And if you don't happen to win the drawing, don't worry. You can find Richie's book on Amazon or on Audible. And we want to encourage you to do that. If you were touched by his story tonight, feel free to look him up on Amazon and get that book for you and your loved ones. Well, we look forward to seeing you back here. This was night 1. We'll be back with night 2 with a interview with our own Chris, who will start out this whole series for us, and you're not going to miss that story. Trust me, God has done an amazing work in his life, and I guarantee you, no matter how low you felt like you've been, his story is going to give you some hope. So don't miss tomorrow night. Until then, I hope you are blessed, and we'll see you tomorrow.